Hey everyone, it's Jess, and this is the Beez Knits Podcast. This is episode 3, and the 4th time that I've tried recording this. The last one I recorded was the best take that I did so far, but I had a serious problem with the integrity of one of the files, and then I was trying to edit it, and it was just this whole mess, and I just thought, let's just try one more time real quick. So this might be shorter. Some of the other ones I recorded were about an hour with talking, but I feel like super repetitive because I've said the same thing in different ways the past week, because I've been trying to record this over the past week. So today is Wednesday, August 23rd. Today is Wednesday. I'm going to try to get this up today. I wanted to get it up yesterday, but obviously, as I said, there were a lot of things against me. I'll apologize ahead of time. My allergies are kind of bothering me. They've been bothering me on and off all week. So that's just another thing to add to the frustration of trying to podcast today and all week. If you're a returning viewer, many thanks and welcome back. I know that I have a couple people who are subscribed, and I've got some people that I know are in the Ravelry Beez Knits Podcast group. So if you watch and you are not part of the group already, come join us. We have 2 currently people in there other than me, and it's already a lot of fun. So come introduce yourself. We can just talk about all kinds of stuff. If you are a new viewer, welcome to my podcast. This is kind of an acceptable podcast. I talk about, I feel like there's lipstick on my teeth. I'm sorry. I will not do that again. This podcast is a general knitting podcast. It's about the things I've knit. It's about the yarns that I collect. It's about the yarns that I dye, since I've started more seriously getting into dyeing yarns. And then near the end, I like to talk about general stuff, and then, the media that I enjoy consuming, movies, video games, other podcasts, etc. So that's kind of the gist of this. And instead of talking your ear off, let's just get started. I have one finished object after all of these weeks, and it's the Hermione's Everyday Socks. Excuse me. So yep, I have 2 full-size following the pattern socks. So I went to make this out of 1 50-gram skein of sock yarn, and I was kind of concerned that I wasn't going to make it once I got halfway through the first sock, and when I got up to the heel, I got really concerned about how small the ball was getting. So then I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to cast on the second sock, and I worked my way through, and then I alternated between rows once I got to the foot, because I wanted them to be even if they were going to have a larger toe, because this is what I ended up with. I used almost every single bit of this yarn, so I played a serious game of yarn chicken while I was working on this. And my biggest fear, and the reason I cast on another one, was I was afraid I was going to finish one and it looked like this, and the other one would be out of red yarn, say like here, and all of this would have to be white. I wanted them at least to be even. And I think they are even. I think they look pretty good. I've already tried them on and they're very comfy. I had a progress keeper on this to show you how much work I did, but I took it off when I thought the other podcast was acceptable. So from the last time we talked, I did one from the heel to the toe, and the other one I was about this deep into the second sock. So then I got about this much done. So that's good enough for me to share with you, because before this podcast, I didn't even have, progress keepers anyway, so we'll just start doing those from now on to make my life a little easier. That's my only finished object. On to whips, and I've got 4 current whips, and I'm about to cast on another, which I'll talk about. Well, I'm about to cast on like 2 other things. I don't know, I went crazy this weekend and decided that I needed to cast on 2 pairs of socks for no reason. We will start with our oldest whip, which when I checked Ravelry said I started it January 26th. So this is almost, not really, but I feel like it's almost a year old. Ugh. And this ball is a mess. Don't you hate when you're pulling from either the outside or the inside, and then another just decides to do its thing? So I will take care of that later. So what I have to show for all of this time is the brick pullover sweater by Claire Lee, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can take a look at the pattern and you can do it yourself. While I am not finished, this is a great pattern and I would use it again. So let me just show you. So this is the body, which I had gotten done without a problem, and I decided to work on the sleeves. Now, I had put it away kind of in the corner and said when it cools down again, then I can work on it. I don't want to work on a hot sweater, it's really heavy and warm, I'm going to be sitting on my lap and it'll warm me up, which is a stupid excuse to not do something in the middle of winter. It was still cold when I gave up. And I recently, by recently I mean within the past couple weeks, saw Hey It's Rebecca from the Mean Girls podcast talk about how she was going to finish the sleeves on her sweaters, and I got inspired by her. I sat down, I grabbed my needles, and I picked up the stitches and started knitting on a size 8 needle, which is what I thought the body was done on. And then it just seemed too loose in comparison to the body. So I tore out the 10 rows that I did, and then I picked it up and put it on 7s. And I got about, 10 rows in again, and I thought it looked fine, so I kept going. I'm 40 rows in now, but look at how tight this is compared to how much stretch this has. So the gauge is totally off. I thought I was going to be smart and beat the system on this one. I did not. Now I've got to rip out all of those. So I've done about 50 minimum rows on a pair of sleeves and have nothing to show for it, because I'm going to pull this out now that I'm done talking to you and try to get back on that sleeve train, because I actually gave up last week when I realized it was wrong and I was just not interested in fighting with it at the moment. So now that I'm not as upset about it, I can pick it up and work on it again, which I think is a good thing. The other whip that I have that I'm pretty sure you've seen before is the Normal Into Shawl by Heidi Allender. I'm 90% sure I said all of that wrong. And if you remember, I am making it out of, maybe I've never showed this to you. I can't remember now. Everything is a blur right now. I did show you this, which is the Haute Knit Yarns Schoolgirl Crush in the Donatella base, which is their merino cashmere nylon base. And you just see how squishy this is. And so I was hemming and hawing about what I wanted to do with it, and I finally decided it would feel really nice, around your neck as a scarf or a shawl or a cowl. So I went on Ravelry and looked up a bunch of stuff, and then I decided on this one, which I am so glad I did because it is beautiful. It's fun to knit. It's actually a relatively quick knit if you've got the time to just set yourself down and work on it. And parts of it are mindless. The garter section you could do while watching a movie or even hanging out with people. A conversation wouldn't distract you from the basicness of that part. But as far as the lace goes, because I don't do a lot of lace, even though I think it's beautiful and I do enjoy doing it, I just haven't done a lot of lace projects besides a couple of hats that had lace patterns in them. I feel that it's important to pay attention during that part. But if you're, a profesh and can memorize that stuff and just go, it's not complicated. I'm sure you could do it yourself and have it memorized and do it while you're watching something or talking to people. Just not me. So here's a kind of close-up of the lace section, which is, it's so simple, but it's so beautiful looking at the same time. You know what I mean? And here you go. And the tippy tip. And I also put, a little stitch marker that I made on it, so that next time I talk to you, I will know that this is where I am. And all I did was, when I went to Joann Fabrics, I bought myself lobster claws, some jump rings, And this in particular happens to be a paper clip that I thought was cute and I wanted to use it, so I did. And so that's the shawl. And my favorite part about this shawl, and I loved the most when I got started, was that you start here at the tip, you cast on 4 stitches, and then you start working your way through. So as you start, it grows very quickly, and you get a lot of instant gratification from this project, which is also a bonus. Sometimes you don't like the long slog of going like 200 stitches over and over and over and over again. So this really gets you invested in the project quickly. You can get pretty deep into it in only an hour. And the other thing that I thought was fun was as you're knitting across, you notice all of a sudden as you're holding your needles this way that your work starts looking as it's going diagonal. And also, while you're working on it, it starts to collect this curve as you're going. So it's just really fun to watch it grow and really take shape. So I'm a huge fan of this, and I would for sure, look at that. I would for sure tell anyone to make this. Put my little tail underneath here. Stab myself in the neck. Yeah, look at that. That looks super cute already. No? Yes? What do you think? I like it. I'm going to wear it for a little bit because it's kind of cool right now in the morning. It's going to heat up. So I had a whole story about this. I'll make it really quick this time because it probably didn't need to be as long as it was every other time I told it. Basically, I took a picture of my needles, this skein of yarn, and my notepad saying I was going to start this project. Less than 5 minutes after I posted it and got ready to cast it on, the power went out. So needless to say, I didn't feel like starting a brand new pattern in the dark. So I actually had to knit on the Hermione's Everyday Socks by candlelight for a while. That's the story. It doesn't need to be this big production that I made it every other time. So I'll just leave it with you there. You can ask questions if you want. We lost power 2 times in 2 days, both nights. It was quite frustrating, as well as a very big learning experience for us, because we realized we were not really prepared if we lost power. So that's good to know, because it wasn't too serious, and it's better to be prepared, and it always takes a mistake to learn something, doesn't it? And the only other thing about this project is that I've been keeping it in my Space Kitty project bag that I made. So that's been fun. Okay, on to one of the newer whips. Is a pair of just plain vanilla socks. I'm trying to figure out my own general vanilla recipe, as people say, on this. So I have used Doodle Butts by Goose, which I know I've shown on Instagram. It is also on my Ravelry page in the stash section. It looks like this. This is the first yarn that I dyed using the actual acid dyes. It didn't turn out entirely how I wanted, so I was just trying to find a use for it, because I don't like just leaving yarn sitting around. That just drives me nuts. And it's not that I don't like this yarn, it's just in my mind it wasn't what I wanted it to be, so I learned a lot from this guy. And I did a swatch. I shared it probably on Instagram. If not, it's on my Ravelry page. And then I ripped it out and got started on my socks. I've literally just got the cuff and a couple rows deep into the body here. Ouch. As you can see the difference in color. And I feel like Doodle Butts by Goose would be a good yarn for like any kind of teenager. As I'm looking at this, I feel like these are just teenager socks, not necessarily teenage boy. I feel like a lot of teenage girls would be interested in this too. I just feel like this reminds me a lot of being like 15, something like that. So I don't know what I'm going to do with these socks when they're done. I don't know who they're going to fit when I'm done. And then the other thing I have to share, since we've got this project, is this little bee is another one of the charms I bought when I went to Joann Fabrics to make my own. I wish it would focus on this instead of the background. But you get what you get, don't you? So I bought a pack of bee charms, a pack of Halloween charms, and then the pack of paper clips, and I made myself a whole bunch of stitch markers, which I may as well just show you now. I made all of these. Oh, this guy is stuck. So I got Halloween ones. I've got a beetle, maybe it's supposed to be a scarab, a spider, a crescent moon, a bone, a skull, and just a bunch of bees. So that's what I did. And now, as long as I don't lose any, I'll technically have enough progress keepers for eternity, is kind of the goal there. So that is the first sock that I cast on over the weekend. And I didn't get very far because I ended up setting it down and starting the other sock, because this is going to be my just plain mindless, watching TV, talking with people, car ride sock. It's what I was trying to do. So I just kind of stopped right there. This is the color for the body of the sock. And I thought that these went together really well. So that's that. And my last whip is another sock. It's made out of some baby yarn. I'm pretty sure it's a sport weight, if I remember correctly. It's just, you know how when you go to the craft store, you can buy like a huge skein, like this big, of baby yarn? I did that when I was making a baby blanket when I first started, having no concept of how much yarn I needed. And I was like, I'm making it for a baby, I need baby yarn. And I had no idea, and I've learned a lot since then. But the problem is I now have a lot of that in my house that I've got to learn how to take care of and deal with. So I decided to make some socks out of it. And I think I may have shown you before the rye socks that I made from Tin Can Knits out of some fisherman's wool that I dyed. And I really enjoyed the pattern. I felt like the socks were comfy. They were really warm. So I thought I'd make some of these as gift knits. I don't know who's getting them. I just thought I'd make up a bunch of socks. Maybe you'll just donate them. And there's nothing wrong with the yarn. It's totally fine yarn. It's soft enough. It's not scratchy. It's quite durable. You could even throw it in the laundry, which is another thing about gift knits and like charity knits will say, is that, you know, anyone can have these and doesn't have to take spectacular care of them to keep using them. And so this is as far as I got. Actually, yesterday I got up to this little bee marker, and I did all of this while trying to edit the podcast and got upset that it wasn't working. So now I am past the all the gusset shaping, and I'm just working on the foot now. And if you want, the back really shows you the way that the colors pool. Is this pooling? I don't even know. But you'll see like the kind of effect that it makes on its own, which is kind of fun. But I really like the way that this garter panel, that's the word I think I want, looks on these socks. It looks within the pattern. It just gives it extra visual interest. So that's the first of the pair. This first sock will be done this week, no problem. I can cast on the second one. I want to try doing 2 at a time legitimately, but I also just find it so satisfying to work through one sock really quickly. So that's that. And not a lot of talking. I'm thinking the next podcast will be better than this one. This one's been a real crazy thing. I think that's all the whips. We'll go on to stash enhancement, which I only have a few items, one of which is missing. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so as you've seen literally moments ago, this bag, I want to make one for my mom for her birthday, so I purchased some fabric from fabric.com so I can make her a reversible project bag. One of the fabrics is here. with the lighthouses. And if you knew my mom, you'd know that, ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to knock you. She's very into lighthouses. She loves the water and all that. So I thought she'd really like it. The other fabric is one that you may have seen other people make project bags out of, which is sheeps as balls of yarn. I thought this was really clever, and I thought my mom would think it was really cute. I bought enough to make a bag for her and a bag for me, so I've got quite a bit of fabric and quite a bit of sewing to actually get done. And the last one I figured I'd buy for myself, as I've already purchased 2 fabrics. Why not add a third onto the pile? You're already paying the shipping for them anyway, right? And I bought this Alexander Henry ice cream fabric. Is this not the best fabric you've ever seen? I love it. I cannot wait to have something out of this. It's so cute. It's so hilarious. And so me. Honestly, if I had the gumption, I would have bought enough to make a dress out of this. This would be a really cute, kind of like, we'll call it a skater dress. It's, the dress style I prefer is between like the dirndl style and a skater style mixed together. So that is what I bought for that. I've been showing you that like a million times, and I've finally officially shown you. The next thing I have for stash enhancement is some stitch markers, which you may have seen on some of my other projects. They are from Coco Knits, and they're these small colored stitch markers, and they are nylon coated steel. And if I can show you, look at how bright those colors are. And also, because they are nylon coated steel, the steel is magnetic. So my goal is to never ever lose a stitch marker again. The good news is that I lost one, I have 60 more to use. So the goal is just to not lose any and to always have stitch markers for socks. The last piece of stash enhancement I have to share is a cake of Swoosh Fiber Arts Beefcake Sock in the cedar, and the beefcake is 100% superwash merino wool. And my mom purchased this for me as well, when she brought me the stitch markers, as a thank you for driving her around to all her various doctor's appointments she's had lately, which she didn't need to do, but I'm not going to say no to some sock yarn, and also this might turn into socks for her anyway, so I don't really feel bad. The plan is to use this green with Leo season for the contrast heels, toes, and cuffs. And I think that this would make a nice pair of socks, because when I showed my mom the yarn that I had dyed, she said she thought it would go good with a dark green for socks. So I'm going to take her advice, and I'm going to make her some socks out of it. Hopefully they're not too pretty that I want to keep them, but I want them to be too pretty so that I can give them away and feel really proud about, you know, the project that I have made. Okay, that's all the actual stash enhancement, and now here's just like a really strange thing to share with you. My mom saw online these Louette square circular knitting needles, and she wanted them because they're supposed to be easier on your hands, as well as you get a more uniform stitch. And it says that the square needles are perfect for knitters who have arthritis, carpal tunnel, or stiffness in their fingers. So my mom has arthritis quite bad, and she does have it in her hands, so anything that can make knitting for her easier is useful. So I'm kind of hoping these work out, even though I feel like they're going to be kind of a gimmick. And if you want, you can just take a quick little look, and you can see as I turn them that they're flat instead of the, you know, normal round knitting needles. And that's all I have to say about these. I haven't tried them out yet. Last time I went on this huge long tangent about knitting needles, which is not necessary. The only thing, since I'm talking about needles, that I will say is that I'm looking at buying myself a pair of the Likey Driftwood needles to try socks on. And then I also want to try, I think it's Addy, the Addy Rockets. I saw a picture in a knitting magazine actually at my library this week, after I saw Stacy from Stress Knits talk about hers, And I don't remember if it was an older video I was watching or her newest one that came out for her podcast. And she was talking about how much she liked them. And I looked at the photo comparison that they had in the ad, and it said that they were coated in, I don't remember what kind of like slippery coating they have. And then they have this super long taper, and that really screams like to me that I want to use them. So I might end up getting both of those at some point to test out, because I don't actually know, other than the bamboo needles I've been using, what I actually like. I don't have a lot of variety of needles. Most of the ones I have are just the ones you would get from the normal craft store. I don't know why I'm sitting like this. Okay, now we're going to talk about the knitting plans. I already showed you one when I showed you stash enhancement, which is, this is a pair of socks. The other plan that I have, if I can find the paperwork, is to make a pair of these Pac-Man socks. Let me show you the picture. This is actually made with picture yarn. As you can see, this right here turns into this. And so this is the Artistic Yarns by Abby, her picture yarn kit my mom purchased for me. You get this big skein of picture yarn. You get a smaller skein of highlighter yellow. This isn't showing up quite as true to color. Highlighter yellow, and then you get another skein this size of black, which I'm not going to show you. And then you use those, plus the particular instructions that she sends with it, and you make some Pac-Man ghosty socks, or polar bear socks, or, you know, alien socks, or whatever. She's got a ton. Check them out. That is the knitting plans for those. And then the only other plan I have, which will coincide with the Beez Knits yarn update that I'll share after this, is I'm going to make a Sew Faded pint-sized sweater for my friend's daughter. I'm very excited about that. Okay, now let's shift into the Beez Knits yarn section. I've already showed you Doodle Butts by Goose, which could easily be renamed. It's, I had it dyed up and I had it sitting in the hank, and I said to Nate, why don't you help me try to name this? And that's just what he said immediately. Alright, so back to what I was talking about. I had to pause it for a minute because someone came upstairs. I was talking about the yarns I've dyed with acid dyes, and I had swatches, so I'll probably share them. They're either or both on my Instagram or my Ravelry page. I just ripped out all of the swatches yesterday after I showed them on the podcast so that I can have them for whatever projects I want to do. So these don't look nearly as fancy, maybe, as they could. And so this is Drunk Cow. And, I don't know, is there really anything to say? It's got a bunch of fun colors. It's really bright and pretty, but not crazy bright. Like, the reds and pinks in it are kind of muted down, so it gives it a little more mellow vibe to it. And this is going to be the bottom part of the Sew Faded sweater. This next one I'm going to show you is going to be the middle part, and I have to dye up the one that's going to be at the top towards their face. This does not have a name specifically yet. I'm thinking about calling it Savannah. And so you can see these two together. And I think these would fade nicely. I tried to keep some of the blues and pinks in the green while making it more green, if you know what I'm saying. So that's those two. And the last one I have to share with you right now, I've named it Fall Formal Flannel. Nate tried to tell me that that's too long. Tell me what you think. What would you name it? What would you name any of these if you thought the name I named them was not necessarily appropriate? And this is my favorite. And this one I got legitimate speckles on. If you can see right above my finger, those red spots, for example. Yep, right there. And there's a bunch throughout. So this was my most successful speckle, which I was very proud of. And those are all the yarns that I have dyed so far to share with you. Like I said, I'm going to do one more so I can get started on that sweater that I want to make. And these are all dyed on 50-gram hanks. I didn't want to do it on 100 in case I didn't like any of them, so I'm looking at getting myself some larger hanks size. Looking at getting myself some larger sized amounts of yarn to do some dyeing on. I set up a Store Envy page for my yarn. There's nothing officially for sale there yet, but that's probably where I'll list it. No, I'm not using Etsy. Right now I'm hoping I don't have to. I don't love Etsy for, a couple reasons. I don't really want to get into it. It's not really a huge big deal. It's just, personal choice. There's a bunch of different platforms. Store Envy is just the one that I'm most comfortable with right now. So that's the one I'm using. And then all that's left is podcasts and movies and stuff. Last night we watched The Fate of the Furious, and the night before we watched the movie Viral. Viral you can get off Netflix. Fate of the Furious I borrowed as a fast flick from my library. We have seen all of the Fast and Furious movies. They're not... This might be an unpopular opinion, I don't know. They're not the greatest movies, but there's something about them that you just have to keep watching. I think it's just the ridiculousness and the hilariousness of cars in those movies, and also The Rock. But, I don't know. So we watched it. It was like 2.5 hours, which is absurd and way too long. The movie was too long. They could have taken some stuff out of that. But I feel like that about a lot of modern movies. I think that they just use too many effects. I think that they make them way too long. They don't do proper editing anymore, and it drives me nuts to sit down and watch 2.5 hours of garbage. I don't know. Everyone has their own opinion. I'm just not a fan of a lot of the newer movies, especially action movies. We saw Viral on Monday, and that, as a basic synopsis, is kind of like a sci-fi thriller / horror movie in which there's a parasitic worm that is infecting humans around in this neighborhood, and they get quarantined, and it's just about all of that. It's kind of a zombie movie in a way. If you've ever seen the TV show The Strain, and I'm 90% sure it's also a graphic novel and or a comic book, so if you've seen or watched it, you understand the general gist of worm parasite zombie kind of thing, even though in The Strain they're vampires. Hope I didn't spoil that for you. I feel like you could kind of figure that out on your own at some point, that they're not... They look like Nosferatu, but they have this weird, alien thing that comes out to eat. So you would figure that out on your own, probably pretty easily. And I didn't mind that movie either. It's not one of those watch it again kind of movies. But, I mean, if you like that kind of movie, you'd probably really enjoy it, because I relatively enjoyed it for not being a huge fan of that type of movie. It wasn't too long. I think it was an hour and a half. It came out in 2016. And I saw Rotten Tomatoes rated it like a 50% or something, which I think is low. So I think you should give it a shot. It's on Netflix. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. And then, let's see. I also, movie-wise, we watched a documentary that I'd seen before called The Elephant in the Living Room. And if you've never seen this, it's a documentary about people who keep exotic pets. It talks about a police officer type person. They're not actually police officers, but he's kind of like, they do the policing, and they're firefighters and EMTs and just generally everything for this area. And so this guy, basically wildlife control police officer guy in Ohio, talks about all the exotic pets that he's dealt with, and captured and tried to rehome and all of that. And they also talk about, in particular, this one guy who has pet lions, and at one point in the movie, his 2 full-size lions have babies, and he's got about 4 or 5 lions on his hands, which, imagine them full-grown. Where could you even keep that many large animals? And as well as keep them happy and comfortable. And so, it's all about his story, and then the general story of, people getting snakes, and then they get too big, and then they let them go, and how they're an invasive species, basically, in, like, the Everglades in Florida and stuff. And it's interesting. It's an interesting point of view when you can see a man who cares for the welfare of the animals doing the job, as well as seeing this man who loves his lions with all of himself. And the end of the movie is heartbreaking. Something very, very sad happens, and I cried. I think most people who are criers would cry. I think some people who are into animals would probably cry. Don't let it dissuade you from watching the movie. It's really good. It's nice to see some other viewpoints from yourself. It's nice to see other people, every once in a while, and get out of your own bubble. That I watched on Tubi TV, because it is no longer on Netflix, and I don't believe that it's on Hulu right now either. I don't know what's on Amazon. I don't have Amazon Prime, so that you'll have to find out on your own. Right now we have Netflix, a trial kind of period with Hulu, and then I watch some stuff other places as well. And if I find something somewhere and I talk about it, I'll try to tell you where I watched it. As far as TV shows, we finished watching This Is Us. I cried my eyes out like everyone else did. Nate seemed to like it. It's such a... I don't know. It's quite real in a lot of aspects where they talk about relationships, but a lot of it feels far away from my reality in a way. So parts of it are fantastical and definitely, part of a drama TV show. But the other parts, they're really human emotions and situations they get down to in the end. Like, Randall and his dad. You may not be adopted, but you may know someone close to you that has cancer. Same thing with, the twins. Maybe you're the sibling who needs someone to lean on all the time, or maybe you're the one who is always giving too much of yourself, even to the detriment of your own life. There's a lot of things that you may not fit exactly where the other person is, but you see a lot of yourself in a lot of situations, and a lot of the people you either know or have in your family in there. So that's worth giving a go if you haven't seen it yet. I know season 2 is supposed to be starting this fall, whenever that is. I don't know the specific date that it starts up again. And that we watched on Hulu. I'm sorry. It's my allergies. Let me take a drink. Okay. I also watched by myself on Hulu Wayward Pines. And I had a big conversation about this with you guys yesterday when I was recording. I'm not going to go that deep into it this time. I watched the first 2 seasons. They haven't decided, as far as I'm aware, if there is or is not going to be a season 3. It's basically a dystopian kind of, theme running throughout. There's one town that everyone's in, and it starts out really confusing. And I don't think that I'll call this a spoiler, but I won't tell you much more because I don't remember where in the show it falls, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Is that there's someone who thought it was 1998, and then someone else who thought that it was 2018 or whatever, and one of them thought they were only there for 5 days, the other one thought they were there for 15 years, and one was there for much longer than the other, and it's very strange, the timeline, and then you start realizing why. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, because I'm pretty sure that the last season came out this past year, so you could be behind. But you should check it out if you're into dystopian things. It's a little scientific, not scientific, it's a little bit of sci-fi in there. It's got a little bit of horror element. It's very suspenseful. It kind of goes around with a lot of the other shows and movies lately that have been very dystopian coming out again, which is one of my favorite general themes of movies. I love a lot of the 70s and 80s sci-fi movies like that. I love Blade Runner, I love Total Recall, I love Mad Max 1, 2, 3. Not the new one, I don't want to get into that. It's an unpopular opinion, and I hated it. I was very disappointed with it, and that's where I'll leave it. I liked Logan's Run. I like Running Man. That's one I loved. What's the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme? I don't remember. Maybe I'll write it down if I can remember. It's the one where he's like... Oh gosh, I can't remember what it is. That's driving me nuts. I'll try to figure that out. I liked the episode of Handmaid's Tale that I watched. I was trying to get through the book first. 1984 is my jam. It's just one of the things that I really enjoy. Especially if they're set very much in like this crazy hyper-realistic sci-fi future with all this stuff. Fifth Element fits even. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy. And it was kind of along those lines, so I liked it. I also started watching Jericho on Netflix. That also starts kind of falling in the post-apocalyptic and dystopian future thing that I enjoy. Those are, like I said, I really like it. And basically, this is not a spoiler, it happens within like the first 2 episodes, is there's an atomic bomb that goes off, and everyone in Jericho is trying to deal with the fallout, literally and figuratively, of this happening. And I think I've seen almost all of the first season. It got kind of slow. I think I'm going to try to give it another shot and keep going with that one. A lot of people liked it. It's supposed to be like a cult favorite, and I finally just got around to watching it. And then also I watched The Good Place, which is like a half-an-hour kind of weird sitcom based in the afterlife. If that's your thing, watch it. It's not funny. It's not something I would normally watch. I didn't hate it. I don't know that I loved it, but I did watch all of the first season. So, I mean, obviously it wasn't terrible because I watched it all. I really enjoyed watching some of the characters be developed and, like, evolve within it. So that was interesting. There was a really strange twist at the end of the first season, so hopefully there'll be a season 2 so we can get some kind of answer off of that. I mean, honestly, they could end it there if they wanted to, but it'd be nice to see where they go from there. And I feel like there was something else that I'm watching. Oh, I'm watching Midnight Texas. That's currently on TV right now, so I'm watching it episode by episode as it comes out on Hulu. As it comes out, the next day I'll watch it. I watched True Blood, and I enjoyed most of it. And Charlene Harris is the one who wrote the books that it was based off of, and she's also done Midnight Texas, which I'm pretty sure is based off of books that she's written too. I've not read any of her actual books, which I feel like I should invest in, you know, just reading some to see if I like them. And I liked the first episode, I liked the second episode. After episode 3, it's kind of one of those take it or leave it kind of things for me. You might like it. I feel like this is a show a lot of people would really like. So yeah, don't let me dissuade you from watching it or at least checking it out. It's definitely interesting. The idea of all these different types of supernatural people living in an area where the veil between the supernatural and, you know, our normal world is so thin is very interesting to me. So I hope that I can get into it again and I'll find it more interesting. So also on the general horror kick, there's this podcast that Stacy from Stress Knits said that she was obsessed with. And so I checked it out, and it's called My Favorite Murder. And if you have any interest in true crime, you kind of have like a sick interest in serial killers, unsolved mysteries, all that kind of, you know, jazz, you should check it out. It's all about real crimes, real serial killers. They even have people call in or share... Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. They have people call in or share on like their Facebook page their murders that happened in the area that they live. So it's very interesting to see how all these things are interconnected, and it's also very scary when you realize how terrible humans are and how you're not safe anywhere. Which is probably why I have some kind of anxiety, because I'm always convinced that a serial killer is going to get me. Because the other thing I like, besides post-apocalyptic and dystopian stuff, is stuff like that. I've watched every episode once, if not multiple times, of Criminal Minds, so I've got a lot of material in my head to just roll through. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Please, if you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe. Is that a thing people want people to do? Do whatever you want. If you want, you can catch me on Ravelry as Betsy Boom. There's the Ravelry, excuse me, the Ravelry group for the podcast. Then I'm on Instagram as Batwings and Bunny Ears. All this stuff will be in the show notes. All the important imperative links will be in the description bar as well. Until then, when I see you guys again, thank you. And I guess just thank you. I don't know, knit. Oh, this is terrible. I gotta figure out a way to end this. I really just recently figured out a way to start the podcast. It's always so awkward stopping something like this or saying goodbye. Are you bad at saying goodbye? Just general, not good at it. Alright, bye.